Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast and on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod. We also want to say thank you to all of our new viewers from our last few episodes. However, a lot of you are not yet subscribed, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already and smash that notification bell because it really helps out our channel a lot. Also, drop a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. Today, Roman and I will be recapping Super Bowl 55 and looking ahead to the 2021 NFL season. How's it going, Roman?
I'm good, Drew. It's been a few days since the Super Bowl, and I'm really excited to talk about it. There's a lot of great talking points. We have some big takeaways that we're going to get into, and I'm just really excited to get into it.
Yeah, so before we jump into that, though, I did want to provide just a brief recap of our pick'em. So for our playoff pick'em, Roman and I each tied for first place. Chris was technically last place, but really he was only a game behind us. He was the only person to pick the Chiefs, so Roman and I picked up a game there and won the quote unquote championship. We each finished with a record of 9-4 in the playoffs, and Chris was right behind at 8-5. The prop bets, though, we were not as lucky there. I technically won the prop bet at 3-8. But as you can see, it was not a great record. And then Roman was right behind me in second at 2-9, and then Chris was at 1-10. For those curious as to which ones I got right, I bet the over on the national anthem, Tom Brady winning MVP, and then I took the under for Mahomes passing yards at 332 and a half. And then Roman, I'll also briefly mention yours. I don't have to get into Chris's because he's not here. But yours, the ones that you got right, the over for the national anthem as well. And then you also said no, that there would not be a trick play touchdown. So it's nice that we each got at least one right, but overall, I think we can count that as a loss and count that as each as bad takes. But we wanted to make sure we recognize the bad takes because we always love to talk about when we have good takes. So to be fair, we also got to mention when we have not great takes. But that's just a brief recap of the prop bets and the pick'em. And I'm looking forward to doing that again next year with you guys. But Roman, I'll let you take it away here with the recap of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so the first half was probably the most interesting half of the game. 3 punts in a row to start the game, but then Kansas City got on the board with a field goal, and then Tampa Bay responded with a touchdown. Surprisingly enough, this was the first touchdown Tom Brady has scored in the first quarter during his 10 Super Bowls in his career. So that's pretty amazing. It was a Gronk for a few yards. That connection going strong once again. And then second quarter, another punt by Kansas City. Tampa Bay drove all the way down the field, got to the 1 yard line, and ran it a few times. Ronald Jones. They couldn't get in though. I thought during live time they got in, but according to the replay, he was just short. So Chiefs, that was a huge fourth down stop, and maybe thought that would turn the tides for them, but no, they had a punt, and then Bucks responded with another touchdown, this time to Gronk, another one in the end zone, more like 17, 20 yards, I think. So that was 14-3. Chiefs responded with a field goal. And then this is probably the most controversial part of the game, the last drive of the first half. Tampa is driving. They got a few calls to go their way. A holding on I think it was Breland or Fuller. I'm not really sure. So that was a first down. And then a big pass interference call. That was like a 30-yard penalty. And then one in the end zone on Tyrann Mathieu that put him at the 1 yard line. And they were able to get in from there to AB. So that was pretty much crucial, even though it was a 15-point deficit going into halftime. I obviously thought Kansas City still had a chance. You never could count them out without a lead. But what are your thoughts, Drew, on the first half? There's a lot of penalties, a lot of controversy, but what do you make of it?
Yeah, so the big talking point after the first half on Twitter, I think even Boomer Esiason and I think Phil Sims mentioned it at the halftime show as well, was the refs and the penalty flags and how many people felt they were taking over the game. But I wanted to push back on that a little bit just because a lot of the penalties were accurate, right? There was holdings, there was offsides on the field goal that led to Tampa Bay scores. And if the refs don't call that, then we're all ripping them because they're helping the Chiefs win the game. They're not helping Tampa Bay. They're bad refs, blah, blah, blah. And then they do make those calls. And then it's like, oh, well, they're taking over the game. They're just here to win. It's not about the refs, it's about the players, blah, blah, blah. So that's a big reason why I've always said being a ref, I think, is one of the most difficult jobs. I think it is the most difficult job in all of sports. Because you are literally in a lose-lose scenario, regardless of what call you make or what call you don't make, you're going to have a lot of people mad at you. So for me, though, I felt like most of those calls were accurate. I mean, it was pretty blatant on the replays. I mean, you don't love having a lot of flags on the field. That second quarter felt like it took forever. However, I'd rather them call a fair game, and I think more blame should be put on the Chiefs just for not being disciplined enough and kind of getting in their own heads a little bit. It seemed like, and not doing stupid penalties, because those are stupid penalties and those are easy calls for the refs to make. So I put more blame on the Chiefs than I do the refs. The last two calls though that got everybody up in arms was the pass interference, the trip on Mike Evans on a deep ball, and then also the pass interference against Tyrann Mathieu, which I believe was also against, he was guarding Mike Evans, I think. I might be mistaken there.
Yeah.
Um, but those are the two calls that got everybody up in arms. The trip call on the first play, that one could go either way. I feel like sometimes you see that call, sometimes you see that's not called. Would I have preferred them not to call it because it's such a big game? Probably, but at the same time, he did trip him. But you could also make an argument there that the ball was too far. So that was a kind of a 50-50 call. I can go either way on that one. But the pass interference in the end zone, I think Chiefs fans who are upset with the penalties, they have every right to be upset with that one. I didn't really think that was a pass interference. I thought the ball was out of reach for Evans anyway, regardless of what Mathieu did. So that one I thought was pretty brutal, and that one I can understand why people were upset about. But overall, yeah, I know the refs were the big part of the big talking point of the first half. I thought Tampa Bay just outplayed Kansas City for the most of it. As you mentioned, they should have scored there on that fourth and goal, third and goal. They should have found a way to find the end zone there. And the Chiefs, that was really their only good play of the game for not just the first half, because the rest of it was pretty rough. And I feel like Tampa Bay just outplayed them in every facet. But what did you think?
Yeah, one team was clearly much better than the other in that first half, and that was Tampa Bay. But to your point about the penalties, the pass interference, I thought that was a fair call. I mean, there was a ton of hand fighting going on, and I think some of that was ignored, I guess you could say. But a pass interference, you can't really ignore that one.
Yeah.
So that and obviously we've seen the past couple of weeks throwing a deep ball at the end of the half. That's something the Buccaneers always seem to do. Or that's something Brady especially always tries to do at the end of the half, just take a deep shot and hope for a penalty. And the Chiefs really fell into that. As for the Mathieu call, I didn't think that should have been a penalty. That ball hit the back wall, which was like a couple yards in the back of the end zone. So I didn't think that was catchable at all. So to that point, that shouldn't have been called. But I think there was much more going on in that half besides penalties. Obviously, the offsides in the field on the field goal attempt, that was a freebie. I mean, the Chiefs really shot themselves in the foot several times, and even to the actual play of the game, the Chiefs were not catching balls on offense. Kelsey had a drop, Hill had a drop, Mahomes overthrew Hardman a couple of times on that first drive, and really it was just sloppy, I guess you could say. The only thing they had going on offense was Mahomes running the ball. That's the only way they're getting yards. So I think you clearly have to give credit to the Bucks for playing well, disciplined, not getting penalties. And although going into the half, I was still concerned that the Chiefs were going to come back because you can't count them out. That just never was the case, and they came out pretty flat.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add there. You mentioned you had a good argument there for why the tripping was a penalty. Like I said, I'm pretty 50-50 on that. I've heard a lot of arguments supporting your case, which I agree with, and I've also seen that, like, for example, Chris did not think that was a penalty, and I can understand his point of view as well. So it was a judgment call, but overall, I think people were blowing the refs out of proportion a little bit and making it like Kansas City was playing a great game when they weren't. I mean, I definitely think I'd have more issue with it if Kansas City was playing well, but they just weren't, right? I mean, as you mentioned, all the drops, I don't think the refs made the Chiefs drop those balls. If they would have made those catches, I think it would have been a much closer game, but it was still what, like a one possession game, I think, at halftime, or two possession game, 21-6. They were still right in there entering the second half, but obviously, as I'm sure you're about to get into, it was kind of over for the
Yeah.
most part.
The writing was kind of on the wall in that second half, or in the second quarter as well, because I know one talking point that we had never mentioned is that the Chiefs were actually spending timeouts during the last drive of the
Yeah,
first half, and many thought that shouldn't have been done because basically you're giving the Buccaneers free time to come up with plays, hence why they threw it deep and got the PI call. So it goes both ways, I guess you could say. Not only was it bad play, but maybe you could just say the Chiefs were outcoached, plain and simple, as well in that first
yeah,
half.
you can make that argument. Yeah, because those timeouts, you're right. I mean, I understand that calling the timeouts because you want to get the ball back, and they were down by a score, I believe, at that point. And hindsight's obviously 2020. So in hindsight, that looked those timeouts look pretty brutal because you're just wasting timeouts to help Tom Brady and the Bucks move the ball, and then eventually it turned into a touchdown. So that whole drive was pretty ugly for the Chiefs. Some of it their own doing it, and some of it the refs doing. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I kind of forgot about that.
And you can tell that there was a lot of intensity in that last drive, especially between Brady and Matthew, and that pretty much finished out the rest of the game with some
Yeah,
unsportsmanlike calls and some beef after the game on Twitter and apologies or whatever happened that we don't necessarily know about. But maybe we'll figure it out if they have like a mic'd up of Brady. Maybe we'll know what he said, but the severity we don't know. But
yeah.
that was a big storyline going through the rest of the game.
Yeah, that was another call too that I had a little bit of issues with. The unsportsmanlike conduct. It just affects the kickoff, so who really cares? But the fact that only Matthew got it off, um, unsportsmanlike conduct, and Brady didn't get anything, that was a little suspicious, because then you look at the replay and Brady was doing just as much as Matthew was, if not more. So I think that should have just been offsetting penalties, instead of Matthew being the only one that got it. But yeah, as you said, in terms of the severity of what Brady said, there's really no way to know unless he was mic'd up. Matthew, of course, said he said something that he would never repeat, which leads to, I think, an obvious assumption of what Brady said. But then he deleted, I think it was an Instagram post, so he deleted that. So now it's like, okay, was he telling the truth? Was he lying? Brady apparently apologized. I don't know. Currently it's a he said, she said scenario. So only time will tell whether or not Brady crossed the line, or if it was just good natured trash talking, which it seemed like in the moment. That's what it seemed like. It was fun to watch the intensity on both Matthew's part and Brady's part. Um, I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, Brady better not get Matthew mad and target Matthew because Matthew's such a great player." But then you could say this literally the same thing about Brady. You don't want to get Brady mad because he's such a great player. So
And and
it's
And Matthew actually had a pick in the first half that was called back
yeah,
with a holding penalty. So I
yeah,
think just them drawing at it the whole first half, I thought Brady actually rattled them quite a bit because he even targeted them on the AB touchdown.
yeah,
So you could really make the argument that the Chiefs kind of awoke a sleeping giant in Brady because it's
yep,
something that we've never really seen before. We've never seen him that outspoken. But you can even see like the people on the national media were saying that Matthew awoke a sleeping giant, and you know
yeah.
it was just the end from there on.
Yeah, and it's also, aside from the Brady angle of it, it's just fun to watch two really good players go at it. You always want to see. That's why you want to. That's why the Super Bowl's there, is because you want to see the best players on either side of the team go at it. And very rarely, I feel like, at least nowadays, we see them literally clash heads as much as they did. So it's really fun to watch. And Matthew, I think Brady won because Matthew was on when they showed him on the sideline. Matthew was throwing helmets and looking visibly angry and discombobulated. So, yeah, but I'll let you get in the second half. Not as much intrigue in the second half as in the first half, but yeah, I'll let you get into it though.
Yeah, if the Chiefs want to use penalties as an excuse for the first half, they definitely can't for the second because the refs I thought were a complete non-factor in this half. The Chiefs started the ball, got a field goal, opened the half of the field goal, cut the deficit down to 12. But then what I thought was the fadeaway ender of this game, Leonard Fournette scored a 20-yard touchdown or so. I thought that iced the game completely because they had nothing else to do. That was pretty much it from then on out. Mahomes had 2 interceptions. The drive after Fournette's touchdown, which led to another field goal to make it 31-9. And then at the very end of the game to Devin White. That was pretty much out of desperation, I thought, because they really had nothing going on. They even went for it on fourth down twice and did not convert. So a lot of that going on. I think you could probably say that while it was desperation, you could probably tell that the Bucks defense I thought were even at a higher level than they were the first half because you could just see Mahomes running around trying to save his life, trying to make a play. You could even see one like literally parallel to the ground making a throw that was actually right on the money, right at his wide receiver's helmet, and he dropped it. So I think this goes back to the first half where the drops continued. They didn't really make adjustments to what the Bucks were doing. Um, and you could tell the Bucks were trying to extend the game even further. I saw like a halftime report that they thought 40 points was a comfortable number to win this game, but apparently 10 was comfortable enough and still would have won. But the Bucks didn't really change much. They scored twice. I felt like they were much more consistent, and the Chiefs were just playing from behind. I saw a stat that said Mahomes ran for like 400 total yards throughout the game because you could really see he's like running back, running left, running right, running 30 yards back. And we'll get into that later, but I mean, obviously, didn't have starting O linemen, so that obviously hurts. But the fact that they couldn't even get in the end zone once, that's very surprising, very shocking, and I think it obviously just more credit to the Bucs, I guess, for coming out with a game plan because normally Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he's had his tussles with Brady in the past and has succeeded most of the time when he was with the Giants, but now Brady got the best of him. And like I kind of mentioned from the first half, the Chiefs were just playing out coached and outmatched on all sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Defense was pounding Mahomes, getting a few sacks. Sue roughed him up a little bit. White roughed him up a little bit, and it was clear that there was no real opportunity for the Chiefs to come back. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm gonna be honest. It wasn't a super entertaining second half. It was pretty dominant by the Buccaneers, but I will give some Chiefs credit. The Chiefs some credit because if it was any other team, I think I would have been like, oh yeah, this game's done. Who cares? But you just can never count Mahomes and the Chiefs out. So it was still entertaining. I mean, even going into the fourth quarter when it was still what a 3-score game, I was like, game's not over yet. There's still a way they can come back because we've seen it with Mahomes last postseason against the Texans, the Titans, and then also in the 49ers in last year's Super Bowl, as well as in this year's playoffs against the Bills in the AFC Championship game. There's really no deficit they can overcome. In many ways, I've earned a little more respect for the Chiefs and Mahomes because I realized they have that air to them, very similar to like in the NBA with LeBron and the Lakers. They have very similar where you can never count them out. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't their night. You mentioned it; they were outcoached, they were outplayed. And they in the past they've been able to overcome those shortcomings and be able to find a way to win the games, but for whatever reason it just wasn't their night. Maybe it was just because the gods like the football gods like Tom Brady a little more than they like Kansas City, even though they obviously like both of them very much, or maybe it was just wasn't their night. I mean, that happens in sports all the time. So it was really interesting to see though, Mahomes scrambling, the Chiefs being extremely desperate. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen them play that desperate in the Mahomes era because they've never really been down. I think this is the first. I think this is the first loss that he's ever lost. Mahomes has lost by double digits. I think you mentioned it. The first game he hasn't scored. They haven't had a touchdown. They haven't cracked double digits. The first for a lot, which shows how great Mahomes has been, and the Chiefs in the Mahomes era. However, it also shows how just off they were for whatever reason. And I think and I feel like people are giving that a little bit too much run because you also have to give credit to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because obviously Brady and the offense were really good. Gronk had a I don't want to say revenge game, but like a resurgent game where he wasn't a huge factor in any of their playoff wins, but he made a big impact tonight or against Sunday night in the Super Bowl. But I think you also have to give a lot of credit to the Tampa Bay defense. Todd Bowles had a really good game plan against the Chiefs, as you mentioned, and I feel like even they're not getting enough credit because Sue had a nice game. Their whole defense had a really good game. So, not like I said, not super entertaining, but it was nice to see Brady win again, and the Bucs really just dominate the Chiefs in a way that I don't think we've ever seen them dominated before in the Mahomes era, at least.
Yeah, it's very uncharacteristic of the Chiefs from what they displayed. Uh, they I mean they I think it's more credit to the Bucks defense because they're playing in the right coverages to take away Tyreek Hill, which obviously was the reason they lost the first time around. So they obviously had some tape to adjust from. And I think they were actually staying in cover two pretty much the whole game. They never left that. They did the best they could to take out Hill. Kelsey had 133 yards, but at the same time, that was pretty much their only source of offense. They were in the ball considerably more in the second half with Clyde, but I mean, at the end of the day, the Bucks just had the better game, and I think it's more credit to them than Mahomes just being bad. I think we'll talk about that a little later with our takes, but a lot of people give Mahomes a lot of credit for trying to make something out of nothing, but I also think there's a double standard with him that we've even seen with the broadcasting. I know during the end of that game we were talking about Tony Romo and how biased he sounded, which I guess is more noticeable in a loss than a win, but that was something that all three of us noticed quite easily at the end of that game.
Yeah, I mean, if you have anything else to add for the Super Bowl, because we can dive right into those takes. So,
No, go for it.
after the game, after every Super Bowl, it seemed like there's a lot of big takeaways, a lot of big storylines coming out of it. So Roman and I each wanted to touch on a few of them. The first one, though, is you kind of alluded it to there, is just was the loss Mahomes' fault? I feel like a lot of people, at least from what I've seen, it's either completely his fault. Or it's not his fault at all. He is God's gift of football. He is Jesus Christ. He is everything we ever want in a football player. Mahomes can do no wrong. Go Mahomes. And I feel like, at least I'm interested to hear your takes on it, but I'm somewhere in the middle, right? I don't think Mahomes was as bad as people are saying he was and how he was solely responsible for the loss. But I also don't think he was not at fault at all because his stats were not great, right? 26 for 49 for 270 yards, no touchdowns, and then 2 interceptions. But you just look at some of the stuff he did where he was running around. Yes, I know we diss Josh Allen and Carson Wentz when they do very similar things, but at the same time, the reason we diss those guys is because they don't know when to get rid of the ball. Mahomes was able to get rid of the ball. A lot of times he was able to make a completion, or he was able to find a wide open receiver, and that guy just straight up dropped the ball. I mean, you mentioned it there where he was literally parallel to the ground, looking like Superman, and was just threw an absolute dime, which was pretty nuts in the moment. And I think it was Williams or Hardman just straight up dropped it. So that could have changed the tide of the game. He made a lot of game changing plays. I feel like more of the blame just has to be put on the receivers though, because they just dropped the ball. Kelsey had a good game, 10 for 133, but even he just seemed a little bit off. You mentioned it there. He had a few drops in the first half. He got it going late. And Tyreek Hill had 7 receptions for 73 yards. I was honestly shocked to see that because he was non-existent for most of the game. I think it might have just been those dump offs, and he was able to get 10 yards around there each dump off because he really didn't have any like explosive dynamic plays like we saw in last year's Super Bowl or really throughout the season, especially when he had 200 yards receiving when they played Tampa Bay in the regular season. So I feel like Mahomes, yes, he didn't have a great game, but I feel like more of the blame should be put on the receivers, especially maybe a little Andy Reid, maybe the play calling, the depleted offensive line. He just had a lot of stuff going against him. And I feel like he did everything he possibly could to overcome that. It's just he can't catch the balls for the receivers. And I feel like if they would have made catches, if he would have, because even the picks he threw, they weren't egregious, right? They weren't awful picks. They weren't great picks because they're interceptions, but they weren't awful. It was him trying to make plays, him being desperate. And maybe you can knock him that a little bit, and maybe you could make the argument, well, if Tom Brady was in that situation, he would have made it. But I think if Tom Brady was in that situation, he might have been even worse. And I think Mahomes did literally everything he could. It just didn't work out. But I'm interested to hear what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think your argument actually kind of convinced me to switch onto your position because I didn't think the loss was on Mahomes, but I'm not going to give him a whole lot of credit for being able to do what he did because I think similarly, you mentioned Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, a bunch of other quarterbacks really have been seen running around trying to dance for their lives, running 30 yards back, just throwing up a duck, and falling incomplete or an interception, making stupid plays like that. But like to your point, at least he was able to put it right on the money. He was really not. It was very accurate. Hit him right in the face mask to multiple receivers multiple times, and they fell incomplete. So I guess to your point, even though it wasn't the best look on him because he was running around for his life with no help. The Chiefs made him look bad in that sense. He did it all he could, and I think more credit. I should give him more credit than I was initially going to give him for trying to make something out of nothing. Because I'm not basing my assumptions or my points directly off the box score, which I know a lot of people do. They look at the box score and said, "Oh, he had a very terrible game." But at the same time, if you actually watch it from start to finish, you'll know that he didn't really have a whole lot to work with. Although he did make his fair share of mistakes that was
Yeah,
purely on his own. He had a couple overthrows at the beginning, took a couple of sacks. Um, I think the loss was not on him, um,
yeah.
but he obviously made his fair share of mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Maybe I was a little too bold there when I said he did everything he could because he did make his fair share of mistakes, and that's why I think we should just be fair with it, right? He didn't have his best. I think feel like he was just in between, and it was a bit of a letdown because in comparison to what we see Mahomes do in the past, where he's able to overcome all obstacles and win, it was weird seeing him not be able to do that. But I think a lot of it was out of his control, even though there are some things he could have definitely improved on for sure.
And if Chris was here, I know we both know that he would vouch for Mahomes and his performance. Um, definitely fair. I guess you could say the two interceptions you could have said they're both ricochet picks. So I guess that's a fair argument to mention. But obviously not the best game, and I think in order to him to propel himself to the next level, to get Brady-esque, he needed to have the best game of his career, and he just didn't deliver.
Yeah, I think Chris would respect our opinions, though. I feel like he wouldn't think we were too crazy. I think if we came on here and said, "Oh yeah, Mahomes sucks. This is all his fault," he would have got really upset. But I feel like Chris, he would have respected this take that we don't think it's all his opinion, but not all of his fault, but also not entirely not his fault. So I'll jump in now to my next take, which is a little bit more on the nose with what Chris was getting irritated with while we were in our group chat talking. Was this might not make sense when I first say it, but I'm going to explain it, so no worries. But I think the Chiefs and their overall just aura and their fans and the media and everything, I think they are officially the new Patriots. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that as a Patriots fan, I feel like I could say this. The Patriots, we win all the time, right? We got Tom Brady. We're dominating. We get all the calls. We're awesome, right? We're the Patriots. And then as soon as something doesn't go our way, then we flip out, right? It's the ref's fault. It's everyone else's fault. We're pointing fingers, giving no credit to the other team. That's just how it is. And I'm not calling out Chris, even though Chris had a little bit of that in him. But just looking at all the overall media, it's just how that they reacted to this Chiefs loss. You mentioned it there at the top, Tony Romo. I don't know. He sounded like his dog just died, or he just got dumped by his girlfriend at the end of the game. I mean, he was just maybe I was just mistaken, but he sounded very just somber and very sad that the Chiefs lost, and he kept like talking about, oh well, they'll be bad, they can win again next year, and blah blah blah. And it was like, dude, like I and I've really noticed throughout the playoffs because in the Browns game and the Bills game, he is just Chiefs, 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 and then they start losing. He's the same exact thing. It's all he's talking about is the Chiefs, the Chiefs, and then his Patrick Mahomes' yeah, he's his wife now. They're married now. Brittany, I can't think of her last name. I believe her first name is Brittany though. I think Brittany Matthews might be her last name. I apologize if I messed that up. But she's on like Twitter and Instagram where ESPN just posted a picture of like Mahomes looking like sad, which is very common whenever a superstar loses a game. They just post this picture. I don't even think there was a caption. It was just like his face. And she calls him out saying like, how dare you talk about a superstar like this? How dare you? It makes a lot of sense. You're putting a superstar in this light, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, give me a break. He lost the game. He didn't play well. Chill out, Brittany. And it's just all this stuff. And it's that. It's also the general media. You kind of mentioned it there with Mahomes, where it's like, oh, well, he's still great. He can do anything. It's just very, again, I just finished living through it, right? It's very Patriots-esque, where I think Chris Jones too came out and was like, oh well, we only lost the game because of the refs. It's very, very Patriots-esque, and I think the Chiefs are going to be back here for several years to come, as long as Mahomes is their quarterback. And I think this might just be how it is, very similar to how it was with the Patriots, where when they win, it's, oh, yes, we're awesome, let's go. And then when they lose, they're pointing the fingers. It's somebody else's fault. And I will give credit, though, to Patrick Mahomes, when in his post-game interview, I think same thing with Andy Reid, they were just like, yeah, they just outplayed us. They were better than us. That's how it is. But just the fans, the media, some of the players, it's just like, they had an off night. Why do we have to lose our minds and just give Tampa Bay credit? Why is it Tony Romo talking about how it's, the Kansas City will be back and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. I like Tony Romo, and this might be a whole different point, but his Chiefs bias, I don't know who's paying him money in the Chiefs organization to just talk about the Chiefs in such a positive light nonstop. But it's just like, dude, give it a break, bro. But what do you think about that?
To respond to a few of your points, I do like Tony Romo, but yeah, you could tell by at the end of the game, his biases were showing. You need to be better than that, Tony. Come on now.
Yeah, and I'm wearing a Cowboys hat right now too, and he's not even. I mean, granted, the Cowboys haven't been in as many situations, at least in recent years, as that like the Chiefs are in. But like, he's not even that biased against the Cowboys. I mean, I think for God's sakes, I think he called the game that Dak Prescott when he broke his ankle or whatever he did. I think he was on that game, and he wasn't even that like depressed about that. He was more depressed at the Chiefs, who he should have zero vesting interest in when they lost that game. I mean, honestly, sorry, Roman, I'll let you get into this. I'm going off again. I think at this point, if Romo loves the Chiefs so much, he should just be their backup quarterback, right? I feel like Romo, he can throw the ball better than Chad Henne. He could be a backup quarterback, win a ring or two. But anyway, sorry, sorry to cut you off there. You can dive in now.
Speaking of Romo, he's up for the Hall of Fame first ballot next year, so maybe he gets in. I don't know.
I
But
don't think he's going to get in.
if you like Drew's Tony Romo rant, please like and subscribe for that one. Thank you. Uh, just to back up on your other points about the Chiefs, they're obviously they're going to be the Patriots dynasty, I guess you could say, unless you want to make a run in the Bucks. You can talk about the next dynasty. I think it's the Chiefs, obviously. Last year when they won the Super Bowl, I wasn't necessarily rooting for them, but I didn't mind it that they won. But now it's going to be people are going to get tired of seeing them win almost every single year. Uh, I don't know if you want to say Patriots-esque or you want to say most hated team in the league. I think those are pretty synonymous with each other,
Yeah.
but they're gonna be up there. They're gonna be contending every year, which is fair enough. I mean, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, so that's definitely what we should expect going forward. I have a couple of takes about the Super Bowl next year, but uh, they're gonna be contenders every year. I mean, that's what we gotta expect. We gotta appreciate greatness. I know for some reason I felt this way too. I didn't necessarily like the Patriots with Brady, but now I'm much more rooting for Brady with the Bucks. So I don't really know what happened there, but I think a lot more people think the Brady on the Bucks is more likable than when he was with the Patriots. So I think the Super Bowl really challenged the mindsets of many people in regards to who they root for and the fan bases they worship, I guess. So it's very interesting. But ultimately, like you said, I agree that the Chiefs are going to be competing. We should expect that going forward. They're going to be a dynasty, Patriots-esque, and no one's going to like it except them.
Yeah, and I feel like the as I mentioned, the reaction through the media, the fans, whatever. I think that just also just kind of rehomed the fact that they are the new Patriots, because that's like I said, I just lived through it. I was one of those people who was like, "Oh, it's the refs' fault." Oh, I mean, Nick Foles. Oh, he sucks. I was one of those guys. Whenever the Patriots lost, that I just pointed the finger, and it's not fun on this end for sure. Seeing all those things and them giving the Bucks zero credit, which was a little bit disappointing, I guess. But at the same time, as long as Mahomes and Reed, they were pretty like, yeah, they just outplayed us. I think Mahomes said I haven't been beaten like that in a very long time. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to see what happens next. If I did see something where like the Seahawks were in a very similar position with the Chiefs. Where I think in Wilson's first year they lost in the playoffs, then Wilson's second year they won a Super Bowl, and then in their third year he lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Literally exactly the same thing that's happened to Mahomes so far. So, and we thought the Seahawks would be a Super Bowl contender for years to come, and they've made the playoffs, but they haven't really reached that level again since that loss to Tom Brady. So it'll be interesting to see if the Chiefs can come back. But I'll let you jump in here to your next big point.
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty common take, but because of this loss from Mahomes, I don't think there's any way he can catch up to Tom Brady in terms of the absolute GOAT. Especially when you think about the Bucks, they might not be done yet. They could have a couple years left with Brady, depending on how long he wants to stay. Mahomes or Brady might even get 8 or 9. I mean, it's very possible. But Mahomes would really have to play until he's 45 to get as many rings as him. And although it's certainly possible he can get as many rings, it'll be very tough for him to even get close. It's unsimilar to like the Jordan LeBron debate because I think they're actually pretty kind of similar. But Brady is the biggest winner in sports, and it'll be hard for Mahomes to catch up to him, especially with the fact that this loss is now on his record that Mahomes lost to a 43-year-old Tom Brady. That's going to be on his record for sure. And I think if he wants to be the GOAT, he's going to have to put up some more impressive performances because this playoff run for Brady was probably the most impressive playoff run from any team ever, going through Drew Brees, then Aaron Rodgers, then Patrick Mahomes. It's like never seen
Taylor
before.
Heineke.
Taylor
Taylor
Heineke, of
Heineke.
course, just re-signed a deal today,
Yeah, I did. I
actually.
saw it. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it'll take a lot for Mahomes to even get close to Brady, and I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, this is actually my final point. So we're just kind of killing two birds with one stone here. Um, because I think Tom Brady is the unquestioned GOAT now, right? I mean, I think Mahomes could be in a very similar spot with like I think he is going to get more rings than Peyton Manning or Drew Brees. He's not going to
Hmm.
get as many as Brady though. So I think he'd be in that camp though, where you make the argument, oh well, because I think Brady's passed him in stats now. But for a long time, Manning and Breeze, they had better stats than Brady did, but Brady had the championship. So I think Mahomes and Brady, that could be very similar. I wouldn't surprise me if Mahomes, especially because he started out so young, where he's demolishing all the records that Brady currently has. But then in
Hmm.
terms of championships, Brady still wins out there. And you mentioned it, the loss too, not just the fact that he lost to Tom Brady, but the fact that he lost in the fashion that he did, where it wasn't that close. And I know we just got to talking about how it wasn't all his fault. I still agree with that. But when you look down 10 years from now, people aren't going to be like, oh, well, Mahomes was actually pretty good. They're going to look at the box score, and the box score is not great on Mahomes. So in terms of legacy, this loss is going to hurt him. And it wasn't even close, too. Brady's losses, he had the two to the Giants where it was the Tyree helmet catch, which was kind of a miracle. And then there was the other Giants where they had the crazy Mario Manningham catch, the field goal to win it, whatever. Those two were pretty, and they were in the games, right? So yeah, the Giants shouldn't lose to the Giants, but they were at least in the games. And then even same thing with the Eagles game too, right? They were in that game, and the Eagles were a really good team. And I think a lot of people picked the Eagles to even win that Super Bowl, despite having Nick Foles. But that was when he was in full. I don't know if we can say this big bleep Nick form. I would just say I'll bleep it out myself. So he was actually like a really good quarterback, and that turned into a big contract with the Jags too. So Brady's Super Bowl losses, I think, are all better. They're still lost, but they're better than this one to the Bucks.
And
So
in terms of his wins, this is probably the most this is clearly the most convincing win he's ever had. This didn't even go to any fourth quarter drama. I mean, this is multiple
yeah,
score games. Every Super Bowl he's been a part of has been one score games down to the fourth quarter, last
yeah,
possession of the game. This one, he was cruising the whole way, and I think that even is a bigger testament. I mean, you can say that, oh, we went to a better team, and that's probably why they didn't have to, focus until the
but
end. But I mean, at the same time, he's still playing at the level he's at for a 43-year-old, and even obviously he had 201 passing yards, but in 3 touchdowns and a rating of 125, that's still very impressive for his age. And obviously, he didn't hit the over passing yards, unfortunately. But I mean, I think the passes he were making were very, very accurate, very good, and I think he's very sharp for a 43-year-old, which is a bigger testament to him.
yeah, and I would push back even. I know it's not your argument, but I'd push back a little bit on the fact that he went to a better team. That's the only reason why he won. I mean, you look at the conference championship. A lot of people were picking the Packers because the Packers are just a better team than the Bucks. And same thing with the Super Bowl. Everyone was, oh, well, the Chiefs are going to walk away with this one easily. So you can't even really make. I don't even think you can make that argument about how he went to a better team, and that's the only reason why he won because he beat better teams. Even the Saints too. A couple in the divisional round. A lot of people were said the Saints were better than the Bucks. So I give a lot of credit to. I give him more credit for this one than I do even for the Rams one a couple years ago when that was a brutal Super Bowl. I
Oh
think it was
yeah,
what 13-3.
yeah,
So yeah, I
this
give
is
him more
by
credit for that one.
far the Chiefs are by far the best team
Yeah,
Brady has ever had to go up against in a Super Bowl. So it's gotten more impressive as time goes by. I think this is probably the best Super Bowl he's won.
yeah. That Rams one. That team was good, but I feel like it was more credit to the defense for locking down them. The Falcons, they were a pretty good team, but I don't think as
Hmm.
good as the Chiefs. The Eagles were pretty good too that year, or even the Seahawks too. I think that was 2014. That was like the Legion of Boom. They were a really good team too.
I think
Way back to the Rams team they played back in his first Super Bowl, which I know those are like, oh, was it really Brady? Because he wasn't like Tom freaking Brady yet. So people don't give him mass credit for those. But that team with Kurt Warner, that was a really, really good team too.
I think it's just the fact that this is the best quarterback matchup in a Super Bowl we've seen in a very long
Yeah,
time, and the fact that Brady was able to beat the person that was going for his spot, I guess, his GOAT, and
yeah,
he beat him. So I think in that sense, you can really take anything else out. The fact that he beat Mahomes, especially, is
yeah.
gonna bolster his spot as the GOAT. Um, I only have one more bold take before we wrap up here. Obviously, the Bucks have a lot of players on free agency. They have Sue, Shaq Barrett, Godwin, AB, Fournette. I do think they'll be able to bring a lot of those back. And even Mike Evans said he's willing to take a pay cut to keep the rest of the team intact. So I hope that happens. But regardless of what they do in free agency, uh, I think this will be a rematch of next year's Super Bowl in LA because I think these are the best two teams in each conference. You can make an argument for the AFC that the Bills are on the come up. Maybe the Ravens challenge them, Titans, the Colts, maybe Miami potentially if they get Deshaun Watson, but we'll see. Uh, I think it's going to be harder for the Chiefs to return than for the Bucks to return, if that makes sense. Because if you look at the NFC, they've shown they can beat the Packers. The Seahawks are all right. The Rams might be their biggest challenger. The Saints won't be as good if they don't have Breeze, which I expect them to be. I think that potentially, and the NFC East, I'm not even going to consider that because they were so bad this past year. And even if the Cowboys re-sign Dak, I think that will make that big of a difference. So I actually think it'll be easier for the Bucks to return than for the Chiefs. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think that's an interesting spin to it.
That's a really interesting take because I think that it's going to be hard for the Bucks to because I look at the North or not the North. I look at the NFC as a whole, and I think there's just better teams or not better teams, but I think the gap between the Bucks and the rest of the NFC is not as vast as the gap between the Chiefs and the rest of the AFC. And maybe it's just one of those like I'll believe it when I see it sort of things. But I mean, the two teams I feel like I'd be the most worried about if I'm a Chiefs fan is the Bills and the Browns, and we just saw them take care of them in the playoffs. Maybe that was experience. They had another year under their belts. Who knows? There's just and the Ravens too. They're not going anywhere. Maybe the Titans, if the Colts get a quarterback, maybe they get Carson Wentz. Who knows? But then he's rumored to go in the Bears right now. Maybe the Bears too. Who knows if they get Carson Wentz? Oh, that's an NFC team. Sorry. I don't know. I just feel like maybe the Jets too. There's a lot of question marks with the AFC or the Chargers with Herbert. Another year, maybe. Who knows? There's a lot of questions with the AFC, and I feel like I have more confidence in the NFC teams that are more established, I guess. We know the Rams are going to be good because their defense, even if Stafford isn't as great as people think he's going to be, I think he's still going to be good. The Cardinals, I think, are going to be good. The Niners, without their injuries, I think are going to be good. The Packers are going to be good. The Bears, maybe if they get Wentz, they're going to be good. I even think the Falcons are a sneaky good team with Arthur Smith now at the helm. If they don't trade their guys, who knows? The Cowboys, I think you're sleep on the Cowboys a little bit. Same with the Washington football team. I just think there's more established teams overall in the NFC. So I think that it's going to be harder for Tampa Bay to return to the Super Bowl. I'd be kind of surprised. I'll be honest if they make it again. But I would if the Chiefs make it again. I would be like, okay, yeah, okay. I'm not surprised. But I'm glad you had that take though, because it is an interesting. I thought you were just going to say the same thing I said, but yeah,
Yeah, ultimately, I think both these teams will return next year, but I think you have to look at the NFC and what the Bucks were able to accomplish. They went into the playoffs as the fifth seed. They were able to take down
yeah,
the Saints, the Packers, a good Washington defense, make it to the Super Bowl, and then win. So I think the other teams that we kind of mentioned, the Rams, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, even, they're going to be, I think, less established, I guess you could say, or not as proven in the playoffs, at least, than those other teams, the Saints, Packers,
yeah,
Bucks. I think the Brady has already had a stronghold on the NFC, and it's only been 1 year. So,
yeah.
to me, I think they should be the automatic favorites from that conference, and so should the Chiefs in the other conference. But obviously, things could go wrong either way. I'm not going to project exactly what their records or anything or how they get to the Super Bowl, but I think they both should be the respective favorites for next year's Super Bowl in their conferences.
Yeah, I mean I feel like yeah, I feel like that's probably accurate. That they're probably the favorites right now where things stand. A lot of it rests on what kind of moves they make, if they're able to bring most of their guys back. A lot of it depends on what other teams do, if they make the trades, if they how they do in the
Yeah,
draft. There's a lot of
which
question
we
marks.
can't project. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But if you're banking on them doing well in those areas and other teams maybe falling short a little bit, I mean, we just saw the other day Russell Wilson might get traded from the Seahawks. What? If that happens, if something nuts like that happens, and he goes to another NFC contender, that could really shake up the picture. Or if he goes to a team that's not in the NFC, that could really drastically decline the amount of talent in the NFC and help the Bucks make it a little bit easier of a road to return to the Super Bowl. But I do think they will have a benefit because I think they're clearly the best team in that division right now. Like this year, you could make an argument whether it was the Saints or the Bucks, but I'm expecting the Saints to lose some guys, to take a little bit of a step back. They could
they're
still be
they're they're in cap hell right now, so they can't bring up a lot of their guys.
a wild card team, I think realistically.
Sure.
But I think the Bucks are clearly the division favorite, and that's not something that wasn't the case. Obviously, they didn't win the division this year. So I think in that respect, I do think their road to the playoffs might be a little bit easier.
The
And
Super Bowl, you
maybe
mean?
yeah, road
Or
through. I
yeah,
think road through the playoffs. Yeah, might be a little bit easier if they have like a bye or if they have some home games. I don't think aside from the Super Bowl, I don't think they had a home game, right?
no.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, in that regard, maybe. But I still I'll work this into my bold take. I think the Rodgers revenge tour in 2020 will carry over into 2021, and I think he gets a Super Bowl. I think the Packers make some moves and I think the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl. I had said we were going to preview the 2021 season. As Roman mentioned, there's not a lot we can preview right now, but I feel like this was a bold take I had going into this season, that Aaron Rodgers was going to be like an MVP candidate. I didn't think he was going to win it, but I thought he was going to be a candidate. So I'm just doubling down on that take. I think the Packers are going to be a really good team, and I think the team they knock off in the NFC Championship game is going to be the Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford at the helm. I think that's what it's going to be. I think the NFC West, I think, is just going to be an absolute dogfight. Though they have three teams. The Seahawks, I think, are maybe the worst team in that division, and they still have Russell Wilson. And I think, the Niners, Cardinals, the Niners get a quarter. The Niners trade for Deshaun Watson. That's insane. But what are your thoughts about that?
I'll start with the Packers. I say that obviously this past draft really meant nothing to them because they were pretty much the same team that carried over and they were able to get back to the NFC Championship. This year, I think they'll actually draft people that actually matter to them and actually useful to Aaron Rodgers, like a wide receiver perhaps. That would be very beneficial. So in that respect, I do think Rodgers can get back to the Super Bowl. It's just a matter of when. And I think obviously Brady joining that conference was a huge deterrent, I guess, from him getting there, a huge roadblock from him getting there. So I actually wouldn't mind it if Rodgers went back to the Super Bowl. But to talk about the NFC West for a hot sec, I think that's going to be the best division, even if they get Watson in there or not. Because Chris and I were actually talking about it in our Stafford Goff episode that there's no guarantee that the Rams are even going to make it out of that division because of all the good defenses, the good offenses they're playing. Stafford, I guess, not being proven in big games. I think all that will, be being really big storylines to follow, and that's going to be the best division going into next year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the best divisions in football this year, and I think it's going to be even a little bit better because I think the Niners are going to be better. Even if they don't get Deshaun Watson, I think they're still going to be a
I
really
agree.
good team. Because they're going to get Jimmy G. I think it's an upgrade over what were they trotting out there? C.J. Beathard and Nick
Nick
Mullins this
Mullins,
year. George Kittle will hopefully be back the whole year. Bosa, everybody, the whole defense is going to be back. Yeah, the only concern, I guess, is if Robert Saleh brings some of the defensive talent from the Niners over to him in the Jets, and that could make the AFC more interesting. But who knows? But do you have anything else to add, either about the Super Bowl or anything for the 2021 season as we look ahead?
I think just to wrap up the Super Bowl recap, at least it was a very surprising game. If you're a Bucks fan, you loved it. If you're a Chiefs fan, you didn't. And going into the offseason, we have some other episodes coming up. I'm sure you can preview those quickly for us, Drew. But we have a lot of great content, whether it's trades, offseason moves, and we'll keep up to date with all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll wrap things up here. So once again, we are the Zone Defense Podcast. I've seen a lot of other football-centric podcasts. We are taking a break here for the off season, but don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We still have, as Roman mentioned, plenty of off-season content, including recapping the coaching carousel. That'll be our episode for next week, as well as NFL draft coverage, free agency, or trade news. We've already had, as Roman talked about with the Goff Stafford trade, him and Chris did an update video on that, and we talked about it a little bit last week in our Super Bowl preview. But there's still, if Watson gets traded, there's still going to be hopefully some lot of great trades, free
Carson
agency news.
Wentz.
So we might have Carson Wentz. That's the big rumor right now. So hopefully we'll either have another emergency episode like the Goff Stafford one, or we might have some just incorporated into our weekly episodes. And then we did it last year. We'll do it again this year. We'll do previews for the 2021 NFL season, both in terms of fantasy. So we'll do some fantasy previews as well as just team by team, division by division previews. Very similar to what we did last summer. So be sure to still check out all those. And also, Chris and I are still continuing our weekly Zone Defense Basketball Hour since now NBA is the main sport on right now, unless you're an NHL fan, now that football's over. So we'll keep doing those. So again, make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and Twitter. And you can also search us on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss anything. Smash that like button. Also, drop comments down below. We love reading them. Let us know what you thought about the Super Bowl, if you agree with Roman and I's takes, if you disagreed, and maybe drop like one bold prediction for the 2021 NFL season. We'd love to go through those and respond to all of them. But that'll be it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.